time ago with the people that came up with the ideas for this. Certainly the Hal Huggins book was a landmark, was a watershed. And in fact, 20 years after Hal wrote his book was the time that in 1997, when they did take his license, and just for being such an advocate for mercury-free dentistry, so outspoken in Colorado. So that's when I had a chance to meet him. Bob Jones, who was a victim and an airline pilot and just a fantastic guy. He then invented the Cavitat. His son has the Cavitat. It's a great machine. A great device, excuse me. Bob assembled a whole bunch of people in Denver, including Hal, including me, including my law partner, Jim Turner, Dennis, Don Ewing was there. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm so glad. She's signaling she was there. And by the way, anybody has anything to say, to add, you just keep speaking, because this is small and formal, and that's the way I like it. So Jim Turner said, look, we need to form a group. Immediately came up with the name Consumers for Dental Choice. We were then in Jim's law firm in Washington, and we began. And what we had to begin at the beginning, and by the way, Dawn Ewing is not only a doctor, she is, of course, a dental hygienist, and she sat on the Texas Dental Board by appointment of the governor of Texas in the second biggest state in the United States in size and in population, and has just had incredible experience in this and leading this cause to this extent. And it's a joy to work with her and with Toby. It's a joy to work with IOAMT, and I know each of your past and present presidents, and it's been great. So I'm so glad to be in Dallas with you all. Just 6 weeks ago, or was that 6 years ago? I don't know. But
I know.
Anyway, so we are. So our first battle was, and that's why I'm going to start in the States though, because we had a big development in Maine today. But our first battle was to protect the dentists, and this was a consumer movement. I mean, consumers needed access to a mercury-free dentist and couldn't get one when the dental boards were trying to drive them all out of business. So as a lawyer, we're working with Jim Turner and with great advice from my attorney wife, who said, look, you need to argue the First Amendment. And I said, really? On commerce, on business? She said, sure. She's a communications lawyer, and that's what we did. And we just put that First Amendment right out there. And Terry Lee in Arizona, Andy Landerman then in California, Melton McElwain in Florida. Some of these people are gone from us now. Dwight Cheddar in Minnesota, and just a number of dentists. And these are people that didn't mind me using their name because they had very public battles and they won. And
Charlie, can you back up and tell them about the gag orders in certain states about what dentists were being told they could not say? Why you chose the First Amendment?
Right, absolutely. And that's so important. It's just astounding to young dentists that are told this, but it was quite true. The ADA had in its code of ethics, you cannot talk about mercury effectively. They said if you remove the amalgam, or you can't ever tell them there's toxins in their body. How can the teeth, I mean, what are the teeth if they're not part of the body? What is mercury if not a toxin? So they basically said, don't ever mention mercury. Now that was the ADA, but the dental boards were such handmaidens of the ADA, with a few exceptions on boards like Dawn Ewing and Chet Yokoyama later in California, and so on, Ron King in Minnesota. But in those days, you know, the dentist ran the show, the pro-mercury dentist ran the show entirely, and they were going to enforce the ADA rule. And it was a restraint on free speech because it was truthful speech. As I explained in the Melton McElwain case in Florida, when I went to meet with the Assistant Attorney General, and I was a state attorney general, so usually I could get in the door pretty easily with the state attorneys general, and explain, look, this is truthful, and he has a right to advertise, a First Amendment right. He's speaking truthfully, and you just can't stop it. And he advised his board they needed to dismiss the case, and darn it, they did. Pretty neat. So the case was dismissed. So yes, the gag order was huge, and dentists did lose their licenses. I don't want to kid you. They lost their licenses. One of them who did lose his license, we went out there and got it back, was Larry Hannes in Iowa. The Iowa board pulled his license, and we had to have quite a campaign there in about 2006 or so to get the license back, but we got it back. Others that had already gone on to other things and weren't able to get licenses back, nor was Hal. But it meant though that we could form our perimeter. We could form the mercury-free dentists as a stronger unit. when they could stay in business. They had to stay in business. When we started, the percentage of dentists who were mercury-free in America was 3%, and 3 in 100. And most of them didn't want to talk about it, and the consumers figured they must have been made of silver. The dentist said they're silver fillings. What would anyone think? They're silver fillings. I mean, and it was clearly an intent to deceive. We researched that. I mean, gold fill, they say, well, it's silver because it's the color, and that's just bullshit. The gold fillings are not called gold fillings because they're gold colored. They're called gold fillings because they're made of gold. There's other stuff in it, but they're made of gold. And the silver fillings, one would surmise, are called silver, not because of the color, which is not the main definition of silver. It's the 4th or 5th definition of silver color. The first is, is the metal, the money, silverware. People don't think the color when they hear the word silver, but that's now what the ADA tried to do afterward when they were charged with the deceptive practices, which they were doing. So we did, in fact, kept the dentists on the playing field. They were able to be mercury-free. The strong ones kept saying they were mercury-free, and they stayed in business. And enough of those cases were won that the board backed off for a more particular reason. The board's backed off, and that was that in California, we got the dental board the death penalty. We put them
And
out of
explain
business.
that, because that's important that these young people know, like Andy Landerman's case, who had his license removed. And I'd like to share with the group, not to take away from your time, but Andy was told he could have his license back if he would work in a clinic that placed amalgams.
Absolutely. And I was Andy's lawyer. We went back to the hearing in 1999 and asked to get his license back. And he said, no, he would not put amalgam in. And somebody asked, well, what if the dentist orders you to? And he just dodged that question. And he said, I'm not going to yank them out. He said, I'm not going to just start taking them out all the time, but I'm not going to put them in. I thought that was safe ground, but it wasn't with this board. Now, here was the thing, and they just beat him up. I mean, I felt terrible. I felt as his lawyer, I'm sitting in the hearing and they're just beating the crap out of him. And I just thought, I'm not protecting him. Well, afterward, they got so mad though. See, the board got too mad and lost their cool, because afterward I sat and read the record. I was sitting in Atlanta, honestly, and I was about to go to a meeting. I was reading this whole record and I saw a sentence in there where the chairman of the dental board said, the standard of practice in California is that a dentist must offer amalgam, that a mercury-free practice does not meet the standard of practice in California. Mercury-free practice does not meet the standard of practice. That is, you have to offer the patient amalgam. And I read that, I said, we're going to hang him on that. We'll hang him on that he is requiring a dentist to have mercury in his office, mercury fillings. He can't do that. We'll hang him on it. And I just read that and said it. And I said, this is fantastic. And once I said this, about 6 months later, it was on the front page of the LA Times and in our favor, a huge story called the free speech. It was all around free speech. It was a right to debate the mercury. And it said that the statement by board chairman Christensen, he was a San Francisco professor, the dental school professors, don't get me started. He said his statement set off a firestorm inside and outside the profession. It's so funny, set off the firestorm, because it was me reading this in the transcript and saying, we'll hang the son of a bitch on it. And we did. And it set off a firestorm. That's what the LA Times said. So the dental board had to back off. And they just had to. I mean, the governor's office said, you guys look like idiots. And they had to answer. California, they have to answer some to the Department of Consumer Affairs. Their lawyers are not their lawyers. They're the lawyers of the Director of Consumer Affairs. And their lawyers were telling them they had to change. So we went through a hearing and the board agreed to write a fact sheet, but they didn't. So in 2001, we renewed the battle. Andy, by then, had gotten an agreement that he could get his license back, but they put him on 7 years probation. Now, I read the record. Guys would come out of San Quentin and get 5 years probation. Andy got 7. It was just like, but he got his license, so he could get started. So that was important. Later on, we got that shortened. We went in and got it shortened several years later. But anyway, the board would not write that fact sheet. So we had a whole battle over that. And ultimately the governor's office and the Department of Consumer Affairs just turned against the board, and then the legislature did. And the legislature shut down the dental board and started
They sunset them.
Sunset. No, actually, it's stronger than sunset. Sunset is you have a time and you don't renew them. That is, sunset is the board expires and it's not renewed. This was an aggressive, an activist step in the middle of the period, the time to actually shut them down. Shut them down on December 31st, 2001, start a brand new board January 1. The governor reappointed the whole board and appointed the executive director.
Now, where is Proposition 65 in amongst all of this?
Well, it should have been huge, and we litigated that. We got a court order. We did litigation early. It just didn't. It wasn't the right. It just.
And please explain, what Proposition 65 is for those of the, in Texas we don't have that.
Sure, only in California. It's a warning about toxins. It's got to be on everything. It's got to be a warning. And we litigated it, and there was an agreement by the Dental Association. In fact, when the CDA, the California Dental, agreed to settle, the ADA got so mad that they settled that they got most of their people, the CDA, fired, but the case was settled. And we thought the warnings will go out, and the judge took the settlement. And then the CDA undermined it so much by saying you don't have 10 employees, you don't have to do it. And pretty soon the signs just went down in the dental offices. They were up for a while. As with a number of these reforms, the sustaining is very difficult. Sustaining the battle with the ADA just has so much in it. Canada, this was before we started, Canada issued some very strong guidelines against amalgam, but they're just in the trash heap now. See, but we're not going to let that happen. If the FDA steps up, and we think they will now, we're going to make sure that that's just a continuum, as we did with the Minamata Convention on Mercury. I'll get to that. I want to get to Minamata in a moment, but Don's got it right. I mean the battle was there, but the irony, and IABDM gave Don and Bill Glaris gave Andy an award out in their meeting in California about 5 years ago. He died in 2016, so I think it was a year before he died, the irony was that, as I said when I spoke remotely, was that Andy was out of business and the dental board was riding high, and at the end of it, the dental board was out of business and Andy was riding high, and that was just a wonderful irony. It doesn't always happen in life. The good guys don't always win, but Martin Luther King says the arc of history bends slowly toward justice, sometimes very, very slowly, but in this case, it bent to justice clearly in his favor, and he was really vindicated. With the gag rule basically gone, because the dental board was shut down, and it affected a case I had in Texas later on that same year, because it was right around 9/11 was that case, and the dental board just backed off. It was one of your presidents from Spring, Texas, and the dental board just absolutely backed off and said, clean up your records. So everybody has bad records. Nobody has perfect records. They said, clean up your records. Here's your fine. You get a fine for cleaning up your records. He called me. He was laughing. Anyway, so we had to go on the offense, though. We had to get state fact sheet laws. California had one, was written. We got fact sheet laws in Maine, in Connecticut, New Hampshire, the city of Philadelphia. So fact sheet laws were where the consumer was given information and then could make an informed choice from the information. The dentist had to pass it out, and the state wrote the fact sheet. So in that sense, it was a big step forward. We went on the offensive in the states, and the information came out. Well, that was good. And we also got some people on dental boards: California, Minnesota, Washington State, Dr. Sapoff, Jessica Sapoff. We got some good people. And if the dental board even had one mercury-free dentist, it changed the whole dynamic, because the board couldn't huddle and conspire against mercury-free dentists, because the good guy or the good woman would blow the whistle. So that was a phase, but it was time to go national. And in 2007, we went after FDA. We sued them. We got a settlement in 2008. We went into federal court. The federal judge agreed with me, and she ordered FDA to classify amalgam within a year. They had a year to do it, and they had to do what they'd failed to do, which was just classify. They hadn't even classified it as a device. And we got that order, and they did classify it in 2009. The rule was not that terrible, but it was promoted by the in-house dentist as saying carte blanche to use amalgam, and that's how everybody interpreted it. So we had to go back to FDA and went back and had another hearing with FDA, another another scientific advisory committee meeting. There was one in 06 and Twin. Go ahead, Dawn.
Oh, thank you. Would there be a way that you could provide a link for us this evening where people could see those fact sheets?
Couldn't be the link this evening, but I could, I'll tell you what the best result was the decision in Maine that I just sent in an e-blast today. If you're not on my list and you're listening to this, and I see some names I don't really know that are listening.
Right, I could type in this chat room, so and that shows up permanently then on the webinar when people.
Well, just write Charlie at Toxic Teeth, and then we'll send you. We'll keep you on our list. We don't annoy people with. Well, we sometimes annoy people, but we don't send them out regularly. We send them out when we have something to say. Of course, we send them out very heavily during our matching funds week in August, because that's when Dr. McCullough is matching every dollar, and then you hear from me every day. But otherwise, you hear from me when there's news, and the news today.
You want charlietoxicteeth.org or Charlie at?
Charlie at, CHARLIE at toxic,
Okay.
one word, toxicteeth.org.
I got it.
And please do sign up. And you'll see that, and that was the culmination. And that is where we've had to circle back, because we've had basically a decade of international work, or at least until 2018. The period 2010 to 2018, the shift was to international. It had to be. U.S. wasn't going to move anyway. So this is a way that has now forced them to move. All this international work that I'd like to go through if there's time, but the result was we were able to circle back to the U.S. with quite a record. For example, the European Union bans amalgam. This is 27 countries, even after the UK left. A much bigger population, even without the UK, than in the United States. France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Sweden, and Poland. So they have banned amalgam virtually for children under 15, pregnant and breastfeeding women. I mean, that's FDA isn't remotely there, but Europe is, and that created the pressure. So in 2018, we put together about more than 50 nonprofit groups, including some big players, Sierra Club, Greenpeace. They signed on, Learning Disabilities Association of America, and they signed on to this Chicago Declaration. We unveiled it in Chicago at the Illinois University School of Public Health, and the Chicago Declaration to end dental mercury use in America. And all at once, FDA thought we were important. They didn't before. So we've been able to meet with the director, with the top people at FDA, two meetings, one big by phone, two in person, big room of people on both sides. And the director, true to his promise, convened the Scientific Advisory Committee for FDA in November 2019, November 13 and 14, 2 days of hearings. One of those times was just on amalgam. Yes, go ahead. So that hearing, we brought a powerhouse team of 16 witnesses, and we earlier made the mistake of focusing on victims. It wasn't a good idea. We had really strong witnesses, including Dr. Mark McClure, excuse me, a dentist in Washington, including the former dental school dean, the former dean of the Meharry Dental School in Nashville. We had the National Medical Association represented, who are the Black Physicians of America, just some very International Indian Treaty Council. We had a commissioner from Los Angeles by audio, video, and we had a commissioner from Oregon by audio. One's a Democrat, one's a Republican, one's Black, one's white. We wanted to really have a diverse team of people speaking. We did. Question here? If you have a question, go ahead. I'm hearing you. Okay. So if you have a question, though, just sing it out. I'm happy for you to do it. Mary Lynn Shane from Missouri. Are you on there? Mary Lynn?
Yep, I am.
Good. Well, thank you for joining us last year. You're, of course, listed on our
Charlie.
website.
Hi.
We're delighted, and you were, of course, on our website, and we had a great talk last year.
Yes, thank you so much. Keep up your fantastic progress.
Okay, good. Well,
I enjoy the progress reports. Thank you.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you. I'm so glad you're on.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, because we have not met yet. So anyway, and Teresa Scott is your president. She is on the phone. President Scott, you are on the phone, right? You are the president, are you not?
I am.
Good. Well, congratulations. Sympathies or congratulations, whichever you want to do it. You know, I'm the president of the World Alliance for Mercury-Free Dentistry, and I was elected in Stockholm. And they said, how did that happen? I said, you know, I left the room to go to the bathroom. You know, that was my mistake. And I walked back, and they said, well, we need a president. We just elected you. Anyway, those things happen. I don't know if you were elected that way or not, or maybe you campaigned. Anyway.
I think I was elected, like, you know, through when we were in Tennessee, but I got less than 1 day's notice.
Okay.
Oh, guess what? You're going to do it effective now. Wait, what? It's all good though.
That's good. That's good. You're in Austin? Where are you based?
Oh, I'm in Houston.
Houston. Excuse me. That's insulting for somebody from Houston, isn't it? So so where we with the Minamata Convention on Mercury, which began in 2010, we formed and I created the World Alliance for Mercury-Free Dentistry. The idea was we would go toe to toe with the World Dental Federation. So we had to be world, they were world. Were we world? Not at all. I mean, we were just a few people, but we built it into a world organization. We have allies in over 40 countries. And kind of work with about 20 more. We actually have direct contracts or working relationships with nonprofit groups in about 40 countries now. I've been to 33 countries. I've been to Africa 10 times. I've been to Asia 9 times, Europe more than I can count, been to Latin America as well, working for Mercury-Free Dentistry. And last year, 8 countries announced they were done with amalgam, phasing it out. 8. There had only been Sweden and Norway for years, just them. And people said, well, that's Norwegian, that's Scandinavians, that's different. But Moldova, the poorest country in Europe, ended amalgam, the poorest country in Europe. Nepal announced, and Moldova's done with it. Nepal announced a 5-year plan to phase it out. Indonesia, which is the 4th biggest country in the world, the largest Muslim country in the world, announced that they will sign an order in 2020. I don't know if that's still going to hold with all
of those countries, Charlie, has anybody mandated that there be safe removal?
No, that's not. That has not been in there. I have to say we have to keep the two separate. We have to keep them separate. The removal issue is a medical issue. It's a health. It takes counseling. And it's a whole different cost issue. We can go mercury-free with a few $1 million. The Germans, for example, made clear to us, if you merge the two issues, you are not going to get an end to amalgam in Germany. So that's why we are not dentists, we're not physicians, we are advocates. So we advocate no more mercury use. Your role is essential to get this mercury out and to get it out safely. And that's your role.
Can you briefly say something about the insurance? And people's rights being violated because of insurance trying to dictate what they can and can't have.
Yeah, and that's a huge issue. And I want to say hello to Carol Wells in Ontario. How are you, Carol? Good to see your name on the screen. I don't see you, but I see your name. So thank you for working with us on this dental hygiene project that we're going to push and work together on.
Yeah. Hi, Charlie. Nice to see you.
Oh, there you are. Okay, good, Carol. Nice to see you. Very good. The insurance. This is where we are not winning. We are winning in one-to-one transaction. If it's just me and the patient and Dr. Shane, and the only 2 people making the decision are Dr. Shane and Charlie Brown, we're probably going to end up with mercury-free dentistry. The odds are good. Either she doesn't use it, which she doesn't, or I don't want it, which I wouldn't, or even if she wants to use it, I want you. We'd have to talk about it. And the movement is the dentists are shrinking to a minority. Not true though in the bureaucracies, in the Medicaid, Delta Dental payments, the prisons, the Army, and it's outrageous because they need to stay. Insurance doesn't compete with anybody. They don't have to compete. The National Association of Dental Plans in Dallas, now this is standard plan. We don't have to check it, guys. So it's very different. And yet It can be different. The state of Maine Bureau of Prisons does not use amalgam, not one bit. That means the U.S. Bureau of Prisons, the Missouri, the Texas, they don't have to do it either. Yeah, yeah. The Bangladesh, somebody ought to mute their voice there. The Bangladesh Army does not use amalgam. The Bangladesh Army, well, the Pentagon can't afford it and Bangladesh can. I mean, what kind of humor is that? I mean, they don't have to do it. It's willpower. The Indonesia does not allow amalgam in its public health programs, hasn't since 2016. And the Dental Association president was so proud of me. He showed me the whole payment book when I was in Jakarta. Now, they don't use it at all because they don't need to, and we don't need to in Medicaid. But we do because, frankly, we're pretty contemptuous of lower income people. I was in this, worked with a county commissioner, Mary Sterrett in Oregon, a real friend of ours in our movement. And she's from, in her county, Oregon allowed, Oregon changed its policy to allow mercury-free dentists and mercury-free dentistry for Medicaid patients. It's a big step. Connecticut's the opposite. But Oregon did this and opened it up. And she said, we got to tell the patients that it's now open, that they can get mercury-free dentistry. So she met with the dentist and she had a whole meeting, and then they had this whole string of emails talking about it. And she got, they sent it to her, I think by mistake, she sent it to me. All these dentists talking about serving amalgam patients in her county in Oregon. Not one of them thought the patient had a role at all in the decision because they're poor people. They wouldn't do that to me. I wouldn't walk in an office. In fact, my Native American friends tell me that if they get service off the reservation, they're pretty much treated like anybody else. They get dental care and they get the decision is made. The dentist make a decision. But they said when they're on the reservation, they're just treated like crap. I mean, they're just treated with no choices. They're just another a few minutes the dentist has to spend before they go golfing or something, I guess. So it really is a huge difference in third-party payment. And that is where our focus is in the United States. Our three focuses, because we still have a state project. And as I say, if you didn't get our news on Maine, where the pro mercury dentist, the mercury user, has to get written permission of the patient before they can implant mercury. That's now the law in Maine. They have to give disclosure. They have to tell them about the alternatives. They have to tell them about the risks, and they have to get a signed statement that the patient accepts amalgam. They don't have to do that for anything else. Of course, the Maine dentist would give disclosure on other things, but they don't have to do that. It's only the mercury users who are being regulated. You see how the paradigm shifted from the burden on our dentists, like in the old days, to now the burden on the pro-mercury dentist. That will kill amalgam in Maine if it's properly administered. Because once the patient reads it and has to sign for it and knows there's alternatives, it's just gonna, and the only minority of the dentists in Maine still use amalgam. And we can keep pushing them out. Pushing them out is great. So the change all through the world is such, and there's even an island, a territory in the Pacific, New Caledonia, is part of France. They have an elected president. They're self-governing. They banned amalgam. They banned it last September on a date. The president signed it. I have the order. The president signed it. It wasn't in the future, we'll phase it out. It's banned right now. And I mean, those are the kind of things that are going on around the world. The largest employer in the world is phasing out amalgam, and they have probably thousands of dentists. The largest employer in the world, probably wouldn't surprise you, is the Indian Railway. The Indian Railway transports, not this month, but transports more people than Australia has in its population every day. So they are as a huge business, and they are phasing out amalgam use among their employees and employee families. So we're seeing that progress. The pressure is growing here, and we have had meetings with FDA. We had the hearings I was talking about earlier in November 13th and 14th. We brought 16 people to that hearing. And at the end of the hearing, and I played the tape of it at my, if any of you saw it at the conference, the IABDM conference in Dallas in early March, and the last trip I've had for a while, and all of us have had for a while, I expect. Carol was there, of course, and others of you were there. Your president was there, of course. But anyway, the chairman of the panel directed FDA to start issuing warnings, general warnings to all, disclosures to all, and more particular warnings to the vulnerable, and he listed children. So that's been 5 months. FDA, we know, is working on it. We're working with the staff. This time, and they've fooled me before, so I might be wrong, but this time we feel they're going to step up and issue something. And whatever they issue in limiting the use is the beginning that we can really shift not only private dentistry, but the things Dawn's talking about, where insurance and government programs, where we are really lagging behind because the bureaucracies don't have the same pressure to get moving that you as a dentist have got to stay modern. You've got to stay ahead of the curve. And you guys do. You guys and women do. You're ahead of the curve. You've been ahead of the curve for forever, and now you're being recognized for it. Let me ask for questions. I think I've talked enough, and anyone want to fire questions at me, please do.
Charlie, I'm going to ask a question. I know just a few years ago, a particular dentist that did amalgam removal on a patient, this was in Virginia, and I'm sure you'll know who I'm speaking of, but did amalgam removal on a patient that signed a consent form that they wanted their amalgams removed just because they wanted their amalgams removed. It wasn't that the dentist was making any claims, only to go back to their regular dentist who didn't do safe removal, which is why the person stepped out to seek someone who would do safe amalgam removal, went back to get their teeth cleaned at their home dentist when the dentist said, "Who took out your fillings?" "Oh, no, don't get upset. You just didn't do it the way that I wanted it done, so I went to see somebody. I came back to see you. See, I like you." But in Virginia at that particular time, in order to have your amalgams removed, you had to have a physician state that it was medically necessary for you to have your entire mouth amalgams removed. Can you, or do you know, has Virginia changed? Because that just floored me, that as a citizen of the United States, you couldn't even make a personal choice for yourself. You can go out and get tattoos all over your body, but you can't have your amalgams removed.
Yeah, I think if we pushed that hard, we could get that changed. Colorado said that when they went after Huggins, and they had to back off, that a patient could not request their amalgams to be removed. So they're serviceable amalgams, whatever that means. I guess it means whatever, you know, but they can have them removed. It's their absolute right. And even Colorado, probably the worst state in the country for this stuff. I just think that's about, I read about that if it was a Williamsburg case, if that's where the dentist was, but I wasn't in on it. And I think that's one that probably could be fought and turned around. And that might be a role for for academies to do. The value of academies is it isn't one dentist having to step forward. You know, IABDM could petition the board, could ask the board to do that, could go to a hearing. So think about that, Teresa and Dawn, as a activist role fighting for your members' rights to get their insurance payment for being mercury-free, to comply with informed consumer opinion where they sign for what they want. And absolutely the patient has the right to get their amalgams out. I just don't think that's, and I don't see how they have to go to a physician to do it, because it's not a medical, it's other decisions. And you know, if they said it for aesthetic reasons, you look at what this is. I would say this is the problem. You know?
But you know, here's the thing is that at least in this, you can ask, you know, any patient can ask their dentist to have their amalgams removed. It's just we can't tell the patient, you know, that they need to have their amalgams removed because they're toxic.
No,
Yeah.
Teresa, this was not the case. The case is in Virginia. In order to have your entire mouth of amalgams removed, you have to have a physician that writes a letter to your dentist. That was the issue. The patient, there were no claims being made by the dentist. The consent forms were signed. Huh?
Yeah, I think you can win that one. I think Teresa's right. I think you can win that one because that's
well,
not.
it's already it was probably
You lost. I think you lost it, but I'm saying that
Yes.
you can go back and clarify that because that's what Sam Queen and a bunch of them did.
It's just sad that I'd like to know at what point we'll stop putting it in children.
Well, that's what we're trying to get FDA to do first. That's what Europe did. That's what they're doing in Crete. Tanzania just did it. No
And
children, no women of childbearing age. That's what we're pushing. But
Oh
no.
my God.
Go ahead. Excuse me, Teresa. What?
said, and pregnant women.
Yes, yes.
They're putting amalgams in and taking amalgams out in pregnant women. My God, what that's doing to the baby.
And you know, Freda Rosenbaum has that excellent website, and we need to keep pushing that. What Freda's got, and I am from Florida. I know. No, that's what we're pushing. And in California, it's outrageous because they'll say things. The CDA will say, well, when you've got them, and here's why it's worse, because often pregnant women are covered by Medicaid, but they're not covered the rest of the time. So the dentist will just get in their mouth and say, this is my chance to make all the money I can. So no, it's not avoided during pregnancy, despite what the ADA dentists say. Canada, Carol, says avoid amalgam in pregnant women, but they don't avoid it. And those guidelines are really good in 1996. They just were thrown in the toilet. We got to bring them back in Canada. We got to figure out a way to do that. I just want the dentist I don't know to introduce himself. Veronica Ralt, where are you from? Where do you practice? Anybody I don't know that you can unmute and tell me. Anybody I haven't named, I may not know you. Just tell me, introduce yourself to me, please. Veronica, Audrey, I don't know, I have an Audrey last name there. If you want to, if you don't want to, you keep your peace.
Chai's in Iowa. Chai Wu.
Who's that? Okay.
Sorry, Charlie. Yeah, I'm in Des Moines, Iowa.
You're Audrey?
Hi, I'm Audrey. There's Audrey.
Iowa. Where do you practice? Fantastic.
I'm in Norman, Oklahoma.
You're in Norman, Oklahoma. Audrey, what's your
May Jones, hyphenated.
hyphenated? You were at the meeting, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, great. Very good. Walt is in Iowa. Is that right? Okay, I just can't hear. Okay, well, Audrey, nice to meet you then. Great. Where are you at? Where are you at? In Oklahoma, Audrey. I think I've lost her. Her screen froze. Maybe my screen.
Hi, I'm in Norman.
Norman. The university's there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, go ahead. What other questions? Let's fire them away, please.
Charlie, if nobody else has any other questions, then we're going to wrap up the recording for tonight, but it will be available and should be up by tomorrow. And it'll be out on YouTube. It'll be up on our site. And Charlie, I'll send you a copy so that you can put it up on Toxic Teeth.
Okay, just quickly, Chi, Dr. Wu and Dr. Walker, where do you all practice?
I'm in Des Moines, Iowa.
Oh, you're in Des Moines. Okay, you're the one there in Des Moines, Iowa. Hello, Dr.
Yeah.
Great. Good. Good.
And Charlie, Lisa Walker, I'm a hygienist in Nashville, Tennessee.
Knoxville? Nashville.
Nashville.
Nashville. Okay, good. Very good. Very good. Okay, great. Well, that's very good. And there's Veronica. See her on the screen.
Yes, I'm a dental hygienist in Australia, in Sydney.
I thought you were. I thought you're on our list, aren't you? I've seen the name. If you written receive our material, I thought you were. Okay.
I work in a dental practice where we do the safe amalgam removal, a holistic practice in Sydney.
Fantastic. Who's the dentist?
Prue King.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
Yes.
Anybody else who hadn't identified themselves are welcome to say hello to.
But no, make sure that we say again, if you want to get in touch with Charlie, that you go to charlie@toxicteeth.org, because Charlie, the advantage to this is people will be able to listen this at all different times because it's recorded. So if you've got any questions at all, or you'd like to donate to the Toxic Teeth organization, which again, once a year, Mercola matches.
Yes.
So if you get on the email list, you'll get a letter, which is the best time to make a donation to Charlie's cause. And it's not like they're foo-fooing money away. It's a really good cause. So I'm going to encourage you guys to donate.
We've tried to be very serious with the funds we raise. We're effective, we're efficient. And one of our new donors last year was Dr. Shane. So thank you very much, Dr. Shane. Okay.
Thank you,
It's
Charlie.
my pleasure.
Good. Okay. Well, very good, folks. I'll be in touch and send me a note if you want to get our emails, or just send me a note anyway. We'll talk again.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Bye.